Hello, I'm Tom Martin, and welcome to another episode of A San Francisco Conservative, a new podcast series that poses provocative questions about economics, politics, history, and how life should be. The reason it's titled A San Francisco Conservative is in homage to the book by my dear friend David Parker, joining us from San Francisco. I'm a journalist, and so I have ingrained in my blood a desire to ask questions, learn more. I have great curiosity, and so my politics might not be the same as David's, but every single episode here, I learn a lot. So looking forward to this one. Hey, David, how are you today?
I'm fine. How are you today?
I'm doing well. So a lot of questions about government, proper role of government, and sort of the painful consequences some of us are feeling right now. And I'm thinking about gas prices and menu prices and house prices and so on. And I thought that might be a good jumping off point for to ask you about some of the ideas that you write about in your books, Income and Wealth and the San Francisco Conservative. What are we to make of inflation? Everybody's talking about, oh my gosh, we're in a state of inflation right now. What's going to happen?
We can use the word inflation. Everybody seems to think they know what it means. But it's not really inflation what we're having. Inflation is the correct definition is Milton Friedman. It's printing money, like Argentina used to do, or they did in Germany after World War I. That's inflation, where people walk around with wheelbarrows full of dollars. But if money is backed by gold or by real estate or by the trust in government, the government guarantees the money, you don't have inflation if you don't print any more than the cryptocurrency, which is failing. But one of its claims is that there's X amount of these crypto, and we will never print any more. You will never have inflation with cryptocurrency. That's one of their claims. And that's all inflation is printing of money when you have no right.
Well, I can't resist throwing in, and I'm personally not invested in cryptocurrency. I don't quite understand it, to be perfectly honest, but I've been talking to some friends and business people about it. And it sounds like crypto is in kind of a free fall right now because it's not backed by anything. And at least, maybe I should say more than at least, but our dollars are backed. Makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, it makes a big difference in the world. And if you, another way of doing inflation was Spain in the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, was taking all the gold out of the New World, Peru and Mexico, just robbing all the gold, bringing it back in galleons as with their ships, and stockpiling it. And all during that period when Spain had almost all the gold in the world, it was still the poorest country in Europe. It didn't affect them 1 inch. It didn't make them 1 ounce richer because prices in Europe skyrocketed because that was completely inflation. That was like printing money. You were robbing gold and saying this is the value. It was unearned money. And that was Adam Smith's famous book, Wealth of Nations. One of the themes was you don't create wealth by printing money or by stockpiling gold that you didn't earn. Wealth is a function of production. You make something, you have something. And Spain remained the poorest country in Europe, and it is even today. With all the gold in the world, no value. So Milton Friedman is correct. But we have price rise, and price rise is really rising, and that's genuine demand that's built up over certainly the last 2 years when nobody was spending money. Consumers have money and everybody's working with full employment. Everybody has money to spend, and the supply chain can't keep up with it. Factories are closed. In fact, even a lot of stuff does come from China. And China has been very tough on closing their factories during COVID to stop that spreading of the disease. That's just only backing up supply chain even further. So the prices are rising and rising. And then So when government wants to stimulate an economy, they'll borrow money. And so that creates jobs. Everybody is working because of the stimulus from government. But when that stimulus has a downside, and that stimulus can lead to inflation.
Yeah.
And then government says, whoa, we're going to have to stop inflation. And so what do? They raise interest rates. So they undid the stimulus by clamping down and causing a recession.
So it's more interference.
Yeah, maybe
artificial interference.
How about doing neither? How about just going away?
Right.
Government doesn't belong in the economy.
Yeah. No,
I was perfectly capable of self-correcting it.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you. I guess I was in college when Bill Clinton was president, and so one of his campaign advisors, James Carville, who I still hear on the air from time to time, had that famous phrase, "It's the economy, stupid. People will vote because gas prices are high or because they have to pay an extra $5 for lettuce or what have you." And
Right.
So people seem to believe that the president, not just Congress, but the president is in charge and should be blamed or thanked for that. And you're really saying it'd be much better if they just didn't interfere at all, right?
Right. I would like to thank the president for not interfering in the economy.
Right. Right.
Then they could say, you know why the economy is booming? Because I didn't interfere. That would be you could run for office on that.
I don't think I've ever heard that in my lifetime. Anyone claiming that. Yeah. It's not how
in your lifetime, but before
the
1930s, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you, how do you balance that? I don't know, this might be a strange question, but I know we've talked before about, FDR and the Great Society program and Lyndon Johnson's war on poverty and so on. And to some degree, I've learned so much from you, of course. However, to some degree, I say, well, things were very volatile when Johnson, rolled that out, and it was the days of Martin Luther King and riots in the cities. And so maybe people needed to feel like they were acknowledged, and maybe they wouldn't have said, "Oh, okay, I understand. We all need to be patient. It'll be okay." So I see some, response. I can see why they're motivated to do something like that, even if it's ineffective. But how do you balance? Maybe you'd say that's not really a legitimate need. Things really will take care of themselves. But I can't help but noticing, there's some reason that they rolled out those programs.
Right. Well, two things. One, over time, we've learned that the needle hasn't budged in terms of poverty or improvement in any way. But two, sometimes leadership is required. And if a nation is really anxious, a president can come forward and say, we're going to do some programs, we're going to try to ease the pain, but for a period of time. And they can also say, we're going to provide people with money, but you're going to pay it back, maybe over a long period so it doesn't really hurt you. But nothing for nothing. We don't want to breed dependency, which is one of the downsides of government intervention in the economy. People become dependent, including business. They start depending on government subsidies. Yeah. Farmers are dependent on being paid a lot of money not to produce. Doesn't sound very clean to me.
There's no logic to that. Yeah, interesting.
No logic to that. But, there's logic to that in an emergency.
Yeah.
During the Depression, people thought that the farm prices were dropping and we wouldn't have any food in the country unless we supported it. Okay, a period of time, and then it ends. The farm subsidy should end, and maybe the farmer should pay it back slowly over a period of time.
Yeah.
And they can pay it back slowly by maybe raising prices of the farm products.
Okay. I just want to throw in real quick, if you're listening to us or watching this video podcast, thank you for joining us. This is a San Francisco Conservative. I'm Tom Martin, journalist, host, questioner, and here to explore many fascinating ideas with our featured author every week, every episode, David Parker, author of A San Francisco Conservative and Income and Wealth. And David, that has me thinking, as far as those programs that politicians put forth under the illusion that they do some good, whereas they don't. I recently heard somebody question, tariffs against Russia. Of course, Russia's has this destructive incursion into Ukraine, and certainly during the Trump era, and I guess even the later Obama years, tariffs were imposed. And this economic analyst was saying, if Joe Biden was really smart, he would do away with tariffs because it's the Americans who have to pay the extra costs and so on. I don't know if that, I'm not an economist myself, so I just take that in and makes me wonder. But what are your thoughts about tariffs?
Well, in general, it's true. A tariff to protect the job is generally about $500,000 per job to protect. That that doesn't pencil out.
Yeah, it's hard to
imagine. It doesn't pencil out.
Right.
The cost of goods and services rise $500,000 to protect one job where somebody's earning $50,000, or probably earning $25,000 or $30,000. It doesn't pencil out. The middle class, I've said many times, pays for all taxation, and so they should be wary about advocating any kind of government spending. The rich aren't paying it, and the poor aren't paying it. It's the middle class who are paying everything, always.
Yeah. Here's a hypothetical, and it may, again, I don't know if this is kind of a ridiculous question, but do you think it would be possible for a new leader to come into power, or a new president, who said, okay, everyone, the way we've been doing it for all these decades is wrong. Free market principles are what we really need. Trust me, we may be going through bumpy waters here, but things will resolve themselves. You'll be amazed. And that question kind of reminds me of what you've said. We've talked about, the topic of discrimination, racial discrimination, or other kinds of discrimination. People saying, hey, I really need some protection, but we're not really giving every individual their full due. They're, giving them the respect and credit for what we're all capable of. Do you think it would be possible for a leader to come in with that kind of honesty? We've been doing things sort of in this slightly dishonest way for such a long time.
The Republicans had a policy for a while called starve the beast. George Bush II, every time the Democrats ask for some money for something, he says, sure, I'm going to give you twice what you're asking for. We're going to starve this nation into that's his expression, as a wake-up call. We're going to make this nation collapse, and then you'll get the message. We're going to give you twice what you're asking. It didn't work. And markets adjust and people figure it out. So somebody has to come up there and say that in a stronger way that up until the 1930s, that's how we were. And we were very successful. And why don't we just go back and do what's proven to work? Communism was an idea. Che Guevara said to the Cubans, trust me, I'm way ahead of you. I'm taking all your factories, all your homes, everything you've built up in your lifetime. And if you don't give it to me, I'm going to shoot you in the head. And he did. Hundreds of people, right up to the head, shot them one after the other. Believe me, you're going to thank me later. But that's not the case here, because there's been no history of communism doing a good job. But we have a history of America doing a good job. Our revolution was fought in part. Thomas Jefferson yelled, we're going to have a country with no king or queen. Everybody gets the vote, no matter what your social or background or wealth background is. And the government's going to be so small, you're not even going to see it. And if you think that's kind of scary, you're afraid of democracy, leave. And thousands of people did. They fled to Canada. I think all progressives should go to Canada or Europe, because they would take care of you there. You're in the wrong country. And de Tocqueville, the famous Democracy in America, his big theme was he couldn't believe how responsible Americans were. He says, get rid of the slavery, you idiots. He kept saying that in the book, but otherwise, there's such a response. That's the way to go. He says, that's the way to go. Everybody's on your own and responsible. Don't ask government to do things for you. So there's precedent to this. People, candidates come forward and say, look at de Tocqueville and the founding fathers and the success of this nation, proven by the immigrants who've come here. It was right. Let's go back and do it. Yeah, stop. Take government out of the picture.
Yeah. Well, along those lines, we have an excellent question from our producer, Mark Allen, actually talking about that era of the 1930s when government started to intervene dramatically more and so on. Well, what about Herbert Hoover and leading into that recession in the late 1920s? Did that come out of a free market? I mean, how did that all unfold?
It's just Herbert Hoover was actually breaking his own rules and doing all kinds of stuff to help the economy. He gets a bad rap. And he put up tariffs, by the way, which was really didn't help because Europe retaliated. So that was one of the big reasons for the Great Depression, was putting up Smoot-Hawley tariffs. But what's really bad about what Franklin Roosevelt did is he campaigned in 1932 for all these what seemed to be great ideas, great programs, untried, like communism, untried. And he ran in 1932 on those programs. And January 1, 1933, I'm going to start instituting these programs. And what nobody paid attention to was that depressions, which are generally 2 to 4 years, and as recessions are generally 1 to 2 years, the Great Depression or the depression of the time was over. All the charts showed it was over. Beginning in 1933, the depression was over. And he rammed those things down the throats of the country, and he reversed the end of the depression, and he deepened it from 15 to 25% unemployment and ran it out to World War II, another 8 more years. In World War II, we spent like crazy. We spent our way out of it. Borrowed and spent our way out of it. The whole thing was a mistake. So Hoover says, hang tough, and we were out of it.
Yeah.
We reversed it, blindly reversed it.
Yeah, well, that reminds me, one of the most encouraging ideas I gained from your books is the reminder that the economy is cyclical. And so as people say, hey, we're heading into a bear market, this is terrible, we're all going down, that also means we will be going back up again, right?
And when we go back up, you can look at any graph over the last 200 years, you go back up further. That graph is going up. It's not staying steady. Mm-hmm. So we go down, then when we bounce back higher. Mm. Yeah. And everybody and people in business know that. People in business wait for that moment. In part, I operate that way. I bought real estate when markets crash. Yeah. Why wait? Because they crash so often.
And you're a refreshing voice because you're not an economist. That's such a dirty word, and you're not a professor. That's not such a dirty word. That a lot of professors are not really in business. You're out there in the trenches every day. You have been for decades. And so, are you already starting to think about future opportunities?
Oh yeah, I'm stockpiling cash as we speak for that very purpose. Because when the markets crash, businesses and real estate are sometimes worth less than the value of the loans that are on the property. So I know that if I'm in a strong cash position, I can go to any bank who wants to get those mortgages off their portfolio. They'll come to me. I don't have to come to them. Here, you can have all this property. It's yours, free. But we don't offer that to anybody. We only offer that to somebody we know is in a strong cash position. We don't want that property back again. Our value of our stock will drop if people know that we have been making loans that are all crashing. So to keep up our stock value, we don't want to show any mortgage, any defaults or foreclosures. We'll give you those properties, but you promise don't give them back to us again. They only give them to people who are in a strong position. So I'm getting in that. That's my business plan.
That's great.
And as far as I'm not an economist, but I do have a master's degree in economics.
Yeah.
So I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And although you're not a accredited investment advisor, it sounds like you're giving hope to a lot of us who are small investors. Maybe real estate or an income producing asset. It's something to think about now if we're in a bear market, right?
Yeah, everybody should be stockpiling cash so you can jump in when the market crashes.
Sounds good. We're looking forward to that. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Well, great conversation as always. Thank you. And again, I just will remind everybody to be sure to pick up copies of David's books, Income and Wealth and A San Francisco Conservative, on his website, davidparkeressays.com, or through Amazon. So thank you, David. It was great to see you again.
Great to be here. Thank you.